Hello! The last time I filmed a book video was probably more than 6 months ago, but I couldn't think of a more perfect book to come back with, and that's Earthlings by Sayaka Murata. I actually got a little comment on one of my recent videos saying that I should do one of this. I was going to do the book, I was going to come back with the book reviews anyway, but I was going to go in the order that I last read them. From the time I stopped doing them, but then I thought actually this is probably one of the best books I read this year, which has a really cute cover. Only if you knew the context, because then it wouldn't be so cute anymore. I saw the comment and I was like, yeah, it's gonna be an easy one because it's not that long. It's about I want to say about 250 pages, but it's hardcover, which I hardly ever read, but the print is also quite big. I think I finished reading this in like 2 days. The traffic is back. The thing is, when I'm filming vlogs, I don't realize it, but whenever I'm doing book reviews, the traffic noises really annoy me. I hope they're not getting to you. The book might be short, but my reviews almost never are, so I'm gonna get started. I have a couple of notes that I'll be referring to if I'm looking down. The general themes of this book, according to me, obviously all of this is just my opinion, and you might hear very different, because I feel like you can go many different ways around this book. For me, I saw themes of childhood trauma, seeking love and validation throughout your life and then not seeking it and feeling disengaged with society, trying to fit in, survival. I think that is one of the biggest themes of this book, and feeling very disposable, like as if you don't fulfill the roles that other people need you to fulfill in their lives, you're almost unnecessary of a human being. A lot of people, when I read reviews or when I tried to look through YouTube, they said like, oh, it's like a really crazy book about cannibalism and incest, and I was like, not really. I mean, there's so many different ways you can say a story, and I guess the more you don't know about the story, the better, but I feel like putting those things out there might almost make people feel like, oh, what am I reading? When you go into the book, it's such easy language, and you start reading about these children, and you almost feel like you're reading a children's book, and you almost have to do a double take on like, oh wait, is this for adults? But as you go deeper and deeper, it takes a very like dark turn, and things spiral from there. But at the core of it, it does just explore the human condition and abuse, and I guess how much other people's opinions can have an effect on us. Even when we're children, we're grown up, doesn't really matter. A little bit about the author herself. Sayaka Murata was born in Japan in 1979. So she's just over 40 years old. She's been writing for a really long time, and from her first book itself, she's been an award-winning author, and I believe it's called Breastfeeding, but there isn't a translation in English. The only other book of hers that I've actually read is Convenience Store Woman, one that I rated very highly as well. That book is about a lady who works in a convenience store, and she's very happy with where she is in life. She wouldn't, if you look at her from the outside, you might feel like she's very unsuccessful, because she's kind of like in her late 30s, I believe, and she's not really married, doesn't have children, she's still working in a convenience store, but inside her head she's very happy with where she is, and she's very satisfied. The book is kind of like a constant battle about what she really wants and what makes her happy, and what other people see like potential in her life, and what they think she should achieve, which is, read it if you haven't, it's great. And to jump from there to this, I feel like this goes a little bit deeper onto, it goes back all the way back to the character's childhood, and actually dissects her personality based on her experience from very early on in life. In Convenience Store Woman, she looked mostly at how interactions with our immediate environment can have such a huge impact on how we perceive our lives. Is it a good life? Is it a bad life? How other people see it has a big influence on that. Whereas in this book, it looks at the character's kind of experiences, her encounters with the people who are closest to her, her mother, her sister, teachers, friends, and how every interaction kind of has an impact on her personality, her character development as she grows up. The character, the main girl, I feel like she was written so well. Something that really stood out to me about her is how resilient this little girl was. She was incredible. The character was written so well, and I think that was the most painful part about this character as well. I'm gonna read this part out loud because I think I have nailed I guess my thoughts on this character. No matter how ridiculous the circumstances got, she'd always find a way to make sense of it and work through it, which for me was the most heartbreaking part of the story. Children have no comparison for life, which is why often it is only much later in life that trauma is actualized and realized. And in late adulthood, when we finally gain perspective, we understand that so much of what we experience as children is not really acceptable. And I feel like because she's so young, she's constantly like, oh, I was told that I am useless, that I am ugly, that I'm this, I'm that, I must be. And I am such a pain to my mother. I wish I wasn't even born, then she would be happy with my sister. Like the dialogue is just so kind of like nonchalant. Like she just says it like, oh, if I didn't exist, then it would be so much better for my family. It's such a shame that I am here and then I'm causing them so much grievance. Not exactly in that tone, but like you get the gist of it. That is what broke my heart. Like whenever she would give her perspective on any kind of traumatic incident that would happen, she would only blame herself. She didn't know how to make sense of it other than just saying, oh, like it is all because of my existence. If I only didn't exist, it would be so much easier. And this sort of takes only, like you might think that, you know, there's a happy ending, but I feel like, especially with Japanese authors, they don't believe in happy endings. So as she grows up, she never really stops to, you know, like face her trauma. She never really stops to really deal with it or work through it. It just kind of continues on, and from there you only see her becoming more and more disengaged with society, and her whole rationalization and her whole coping mechanism, it doesn't really stop. She continues to make sense of the world in the best way possible, and by doing that she detaches herself more and more to the point where she starts seeing herself as an alien, as a popian to be exact. And when I was reading this book, I was telling my boyfriend about it. I was like, oh, this book is so like funny. And then I told him about these aliens and popinopopians, and he's like, I actually want to read the book just because of that word, whatever that is, if that's how she's referring to these aliens. Going back to Natsuki's childhood, she faced trauma from the people who were closest to her. So from her mom, her sister, her father, who was like, didn't really play, like he was just not really there, and then her teacher who abused her, friends, family members who thought nothing of her, and these were the only people she could have sought help from whenever everything else was happening. But imagine being abused by every single person in your life. Who do you seek help from? So she forms this really beautiful friendship with one of her cousins, Yu, which again is, I guess, the main plot of the story, which I will not go into because this is a spoiler-free review. I have a lot to say about books without really saying much about them. That's my way of reviewing it, but you'll see it when you read it. So she forms this really amazing friendship, and the whole book is then about just her and Yu and what happens of them based off of her theories on who she is and what the world is. As she grows up, she starts to see and observe the world and see like everyone is the same and everyone's behavior is very predictable. And they see like, oh, they go through the exact same movements, like be it my sister or my mom or my cousin, they're doing the same things, my friends. So at about this age, they graduate and then they start working for a bit and they all get married and then they have children. Like everybody's life is so predictable. So the world must be a factory who produces these like perfect human beings who follow the same predictable route to life. And if you're not doing that, you're not fulfilling your role as a part of the factory. Since everybody has always reiterated the fact that I have never been able to accomplish my role in the factory, I've never really been able to fulfill my, I guess, duties and what I'm supposed to do, must mean that I am a completely weird, like, you know, I'm not even supposed to be here in the first place, hence the whole alien way of thinking. To wrap up my thoughts on the entire book, I feel like it's something that, depending on what culture you grew up in or what kind of household you grew up in, you might have a very different experience reading it. I think the parental entitlement to children's lives in Asian cultures is something that the author really wanted to like kind of dig deep into and really kind of just break it apart and be like, yes, a lot of people feel like they have they are entitled to say exactly how their children's lives should be because they are the ones who brought them up. But then times change, realities change, people grow up in different kinds of times, have different problems and different circumstances, and you know, a child is a child. As much as you know, you want to believe that they have certain reasons for doing something, they are learning from you, they are dependent on you, and so much of what they observe you doing and you behaving and your response to them helps them I guess make sense of the world around them. A really good example is like, is there a child screaming? What's happening? Anyways, a really good example is I think it was back in uni, we were looking at some kind of like developmental studies, and there was a study when like children feel angry or feel frustrated, and if the parents ask like, are you angry? And then the children's like, yes, I'm angry. Are you frustrated? Yes, I'm frustrated. Are you happy? Yes, I'm happy. Children hear these words and this is how they try to make sense. Oh, what I'm feeling right now is this, and that's how they understand, like that's how they ascribe meaning to different things. They learn from nothing and we teach them everything. So it's kind of like that, but in, I guess, a more micro sense, where like when someone says make sense of something that you're doing in a negative way, you just always tend to associate it with something negative. Like if you wear a certain outfit and someone says, why you always dress shabbily, then you think that your own sense of style is just shabby. Like there's no personal sense of style, then there's just me and I dress shabbily. It's small things, but they can actually make a huge impact on children, and that's kind of what the whole thing is about. Another thing about the book that is shocking is, I guess what makes the majority of the second half of the book is how Natsuki's response to the abuse is almost as, I guess, extreme and as like bizarre as the abuse itself. Like the way she responds to it and the turn that the book takes. At some point you're just like, what the hell am I reading? Like, what is this? But that's what makes the book so hilarious, because it's like, you know that this, like, it almost feels like this can't be happening. Like, what am I reading? But it almost makes you question, like, how much of the world we don't question because we're just used to it. And if this was what generally happens, would we question it? We get so conditioned to like seeing something again and again and accepting it, that when we have to be given such extremities nowadays to actually feel like, what the hell is going on? Whereas we should have asked that question from the very first page of the book, not towards the end. It kind of takes you on the journey from like very normalized behavior, what should not be normalized, what should not be accepted, being very accepted, and then almost being normalized, to then going to that extreme where things happen that nobody in society would just be like, yeah, that's all right. It's not necessarily, you know, trying to say that anything like cannibalism or incest or any of these like eating disorders are good things. It's just basically saying that so much of society is normalized that if something happens enough times, it can have the potential to get normalized as well, which is what is dangerous. If we see when something's wrong and we don't say it, and if we don't help other people, if we don't stand up for people, then things are going to get more and more normalized, and that's going to cause more problems and issues for generations to come. I want to end with a couple of quotes I read that I really liked from the book. The first one: what I'm really scared of is believing the words society makes me speak are my own. And that's to do with how she says and does so much that she doesn't really believe in growing up, that she's scared that one day she'll become a part of the factory just by repeating the motions again and again. People can easily pass judgment on others when they're protected by their own normality. Which basically means that you might think that something somebody else is doing is absurd, whereas you think, well, everything that you do is completely normal because it's based off of your normality and your sense of right and wrong, whereas so much of what you do might be bizarre to other people. So it's all kind of subjective, and let people be themselves, I guess. If you're not entirely convinced yet, I think go to Goodreads, have a read on some of the quotes from the book, and it gives you a really good idea of the writing style, the general themes, and in general what the book is about. I think it's great, you should read it. And if you enjoy it, let me know what you guys think about it, because I always seem to recommend these bizarre books and you might come back and be like, sure, you're just weird, which I might be, but also means that every time you come here you'll get a really cool book recommendation. The next book I'll be reviewing will be All the Lovers in the Night by Miku Kawakami, who previously wrote Breasts and Eggs. I hope you'll enjoy it, and I'll see you soon.